The 5'8" position, home to legends like Darren Lockyer and Brad Fittler. But who's the number one 5'8" right now? Stay tuned for my 17-1. Longy here from The Casual Athlete, and we're going to be going through 5'8" rankings today, but every Monday we're going to have new ranking videos up on the channel. First up here in number 17, we have Isaiah Katoa. Now Katoa's had a great start to his career. He's been highlighted by some very strong playmaking ability, and he is sneakily undefeated in the NRL so far in 3 appearances. The only thing that holds him back and gives him the D- grade right now is a bit of a lack of involvement and a bit of a lack of experience there too. One thing you have to keep in mind with Isaiah Katoa is that Sean O'Sullivan's actually leading the league as far as non-hookers go in touches per game. So he's really taking control. Katoa's playing relatively within himself, but I think with that injury now, Katoa's going to have a chance to really come out of his shell. In number 16, we've got Jaden Sullivan. Now, Jaden Sullivan's shown a ton of talent across both 5'8" and hooker so far. His big strength is his running game. Sneakily quite a powerful runner of the ball too. He's got that ability to sort of duck and weave through tackles, and he's a pretty exciting prospect for the Dragons. His only weakness there is more in the creativity side of things, in that as a half, he's very ball running focused and still has some time to go to develop those ball playing abilities. So at number 16, Jaden Sullivan's in there, but he could move up those rankings very quickly as time goes on. In number 15, we have Maire Martin. And Maire Martin's been playing great so far in 2023, but he's a guy that's been around for quite a while. He's got a pretty strong running game. He's a pretty quick guy, with speed being his intangible ability, but he just hasn't shown that ability to take over games the way you want a more experienced half to do. So maturity is that weakness there for Maire Martin, but he's been a good complement to Shaun Johnson at the Warriors. So Maire Martin with a D grade there, number 15. In 14th, Jack in the Box, Joshy Schuster, absolute excitement machine, and that's his strength and his weakness here as well. Now Josh Schuster for Manly, he's made that 5'8" spot his own with Kieran Foran leaving the club, but he's a guy that can do anything on any given play. So creativity is his big strength, but his insanity is the big weakness. So sometimes I think it's important that Joshy Schuster might be better off just tucking the ball under the arm and taking a run, as opposed to going for a crazy chip kick or an insane behind the back play. But those have been coming off for him recently, especially in 2023. So who am I to tell him what to do? Joshy Schuster in 14th right now, could be much higher by the end of the year. In 13th, the guy who's had a long career, who's played a bit of representative footy, Moylan here for the Sharks. And he started 2023 pretty strongly and had a great 2022 campaign. The thing with Moylan is that he's got a very strong running game. He's sneakily a great playmaker, but on the weaknesses side of things, he can be a little softer in defense. Now, Moylan does rack up some of those negative plays too when we look at fantasy and Supercoach, and he was second in 2022 in missed tackles per game with 4.8 missed tackles, and he was fourth with 18 penalties in 2022 as well. So he can give away a negative play, but Matt Moylan does have a lot of upside in his running game. Ranking number 12, excitement machine, Kalyn Ponga, and this one is a bit controversial. If we were ranking fullbacks, he would probably be higher on that list, but as far as 5'8" goes, he hasn't had too much experience in the position. For Ponga, the big strength for him is how explosive he is, and that secret power is the lift he has in some of those big games. So when we look at Kalyn Ponga for Newcastle versus Kalyn Ponga for the Queensland Maroons, they're completely different players. And if we were looking exclusively at the Maroons' Kalyn Ponga, we might have him in the top 10 or even the top 5 of this list. But we're looking at the holistic sort of view of Ponga, and we're focusing in on 5'8". And so far, he hasn't shown an ability to stay on the field at that position or to really dominate games in the same way he did at fullback. In number 11, we have Kieran Foran. And Kieran Foran's not a guy that dominates the stat categories or anything like that, but Kieran Foran is a genuinely very tough, very strong playmaking half. And he's had some troubles with injuries, but one thing to note about Kieran Foran is that in 2022, Kieran Foran led the NRL in line engagements. So he had 157 line engagements, and that really leads itself to Kieran Foran's strength, in that he digs deep into the line before ball playing to his outside men. So guys running off Kieran Foran, and we're looking at Dave Fafita's improvements this year, those guys really benefit from being outside Kieran Foran, and that's what gets him up these rankings at number 11. In number 10, a guy that is quickly ascending these ranking lists, we've got Ezra Maama, excitement machine. His big strength is his attacking ability, very strong running game. His secret power is that speed that he has that allows him to score a lot of tries that other guys wouldn't even get a sniff of. The weakness for Ezra Maama is more that experience and some of that strength and defense that comes with just playing more footy and, building up a bit of size there too. And just on the stats for Ezra Maama, he was 6th in 2022 with 4.3 missed tackles a game. So That drops him down the rankings a little bit, but at 10th spot, he is all upside. And I wouldn't be shocked at all if we saw Ezra Maama in that 7th, 6th, maybe even 5th category there by the end of the year, especially if the Broncos keep playing the way they're playing. In the number 9 spot, we have a guy whose career has been a bit frustrating so far. Looking at Adam Dewey here, and Adam Dewey's had moments in his career where he's been really, really good to watch and sort of shown signals that he's going to take that step, but then hasn't quite taken that leap. One other thing that concerns me about Adam Dewey is that he keeps getting moved out of the halves. So even though he looks like the best half at the Tigers, he gets moved to fullback, he gets moved to centre, and that's sort of stunted Adam Dewey's growth. Still with that though, number 9 spot for Adam Dewey. Look, he's a very creative guy. He's got a very strong running game. For his weakness, I would say it's probably that temperament. Adam Dewey can sometimes get stuck in his own head, it seems a bit, and can sometimes put his head down a bit as well when the Tigers are going poorly. But at the same time, it's hard to judge him for that. I mean, the Tigers have been a tough team to watch, and I can only imagine a tougher team to play for. So for Adam Dewey, I think maybe he needs a fresh start. But at number 9, he's all upside there too. Like he could rocket up these ranks just like Ezra as well. Now for the top 8, I'm calling in the big guns. Bergs, get in here, mate. And we're going to go through your top 5/8s. Number 8, the Canberra Raiders, number 6, Jack Whiten. And this guy is tough to tackle. Running is obviously his big strength, and that strength is the intangible there too. And he's caused injuries before running the ball, and I wouldn't want to tackle him.
No, I think we can ask Ryan Pappenhausen about that. It's taken a number of months off his career so far. But I think with Jack, he kind of lacks a bit of that creativity that makes the Sixers above him so special. He's right there in playing, his role at the Raiders. Can fill in for New South Wales at centre sometimes, but I think I've got a guy just above him at the moment, and he plays for my team. In at 7, we have Tom Dearden. Now, with Dearden, for me, the best part of his game as well is his running game. I think he lacks a little bit in the kicking department, kind of like Jerome Leilua, in the sense that he doesn't take too much of the kicking responsibility. It's often left to Drinkwater and Townsend. But for me, the best part of his game is that show and go, baby.
Yeah, he had 9 tries last year, which is pretty impressive for a half. So, no, I've got to give Tom Dearden a lot of respect. The other thing that I point to there too, and when we do these rankings, we have to look at club performance, but also the representative performance. And Dearden moved about 5 spots up my list when he turned up for Queensland and clutched up that incredible performance last year.
Yeah, it was unreal to see from a man who hasn't had too much of experience, and a lot of people were doubting before he moved to the Cowboys.
Yeah, now this could be controversial, but in number 6, we have the Roosters man, Luke Keary. I've spoken to people in the NRL community, and I've gotten rankings as high as 3rd and as low as 14th for Luke Keary. So he is a guy that's very divisive. Now, I want to throw some stats at you for Luke Keary, because I think he's still one of the premier playmakers in the competition. In 2022, Luke Keary was 2nd in try assists with 22 try assists behind Mitch Moses. Now, Mitch obviously gets a lot of those off kicks. Keary doesn't get as many off kicks. So he might be the premier playmaker in terms of, I guess, hand-to-hand play. The other thing to point out with him is last year he was 4th in support lines run, which is a weird stat, right? But 7.9 support lines a game for Luke Keary. So he's always backing up his man. He's sometimes forgotten because he's a bit off the ball and he's not making those runs like a Jack Whiten or a Dearden or a Cam Munster who's further up this list. But he's still doing a great job for the Roosters.
Yeah, probably not a guy who's got a big frame, so he can't make those runs. And we've seen in recent years that him potentially taking those runs could lead to a shorter career for Luke Keary. But I think at the prime of his career a couple of years ago when he was winning those comps at the Roosters, he was fantastic. But in the last couple of years, probably slid down that list a little bit, and that's why you're getting that fluctuation of rankings at this point in time. But I think the next guy up on our list could be the next best 5'8", as far as up there with the Cam Munsters of the world, Matt Burton.
Matty Burton, yeah. So him and Keary are actually both rated equally in our rankings here. So they're both B graded. So there's not much between them. But for Matty Burton, I mean, that secret power, let's start with that, the dirty bomb. Now, look, Matt Burton can put it up in places that no one wants to get it. And we see it mostly in Origin games. I would love to see it more in club games, because if I was going up against the Dogs, I'm a Para fan, and he was putting those up at Bailey Simonson. I trust Gutho and Sevo a bit more, but if he was chucking those at Bailey,
Yeah, look, I don't think many people in the comp want to catch anything like that. The other thing you've got to add there, he's a left footer. So the ball is going to come off a little bit differently. We see that sometimes in the NFL with, left-handed quarterbacks. Sometimes receivers don't like it coming to them when it's spinning a certain way. But with Burton, he's probably the longest kicker in the competition as well. He could probably boot it 60, 70 yards on the fly. So,
well, he was second in the comp kick meters last year.
Yeah.
Second in kick meters 2022. He was second in 40-20s in 2022. Look, that running game is strong. I've been a bit disappointed by his running game in 2023, but he's still got that as a strength. The weakness for Burton, and I don't know how fair this is as a criticism because he has struggled with not having a genuine 7 alongside him, but I think he's still got a bit of way to go in terms of his creativity. So in number 4, and I'll let you talk a bit more about him because I know you were cheering on Samoa all the way through that World Cup, Jerome Leilua.
Leilua is such an interesting cat. I think for me, he doesn't really use the best part of his game a lot, and it's something that we talked about quite a lot during the World Cup when he had to take over that Samoan team because he's the premier half in that Samoan team. But with Penrith, we don't really see him using the best part of his game, which is his running game. He's got a filthy right foot step. And if you actually watch Jerome Leilua, doesn't really take on the line too much, benefited a lot from having kick out. So I think in the creativity department, you've kind of got to put a bit of an asterisk there. He had some very good players on the outside of him and making him look pretty good every week. And since then, as you were saying in our Panthers preview, Panthers can't score points at the moment.
That's true. And that's the question. Can he do it without kick-out? I mean, he did it for Samoa. But can he do it without kick-out in the NRL? Can he do it at the State of Origin level? This next guy on the list, number 3, a guy I would pick over Leilua for the Blues team personally.
Wow.
Cody Walker. Now, Cody Walker, he can sniff out a try. And that's something you need at the Origin level sometimes. Just a guy who can find a way to score a try. Cody Walker is exceptionally aggressive, exceptionally creative, and exceptionally pure at number 6 in the way he plays. Like, he's not a 7. He's not doing all that kicking, but short kicking game's not bad. Running game's excellent.
Yeah, the only thing with Cody Walker that I will put against him is his temperament. I think there's those times, and we've seen it at club level, and getting into those higher stakes games as well, it can become a bit of an issue when Cody Walker's going off on someone when it's not really required or it's not really needed at that point in time. He has a tendency to lose his head a little bit. But I think Cody Walker, 100%. We saw all those years with Renault that he was, phenomenal. I think top the league in try assists as well with Reynolds in the team. And once you get him that really good working 7, then he can become anything.
I'm going to throw some stats at you right now because we're talking about temperament there, and in terms of ranking him and Leilua was 5th in the competition in penalties in 2022. Now Cody Walker was 12th, so he's not that much further. They're both giving a few away.
Yep.
But for Cody, in terms of attacking potency, 14 tries in 2022. 14.
That's insane.
As a 5/8, number 1 of all 5/8s. He was second in 5/8s for line breaks behind another guy above him here with 12 line breaks. He was 3rd in try assists in the whole competition as well. So he's a guy that's creating points, and even in a year where Souths and he kind of struggled, he still put up numbers. But number 2 here, and this is tough because all 3 of these guys, Leilua, Walker, and Dylan Brown, are all ranked as A- sort of grades there. So there's not a lot between them. 2 to 4, you could swap it. You could do whatever you wanted with it. I wouldn't be able to argue that hard against you. But I think Dylan Brown's the most complete player of this group here.
Has it got anything to do with the fact that he plays for Para? Or
I just think... let's talk about Brown, all right? So, running game. First thing I want to point out. I think Dylan Brown has the best running game of all 5/8s, potentially except for a Cam Munster. In terms of 2022 stats, he was 1st in line breaks out of all the 5/8s. And he was top 10 in try assists in the competition as well. So he was creating tries, and that was a bit of a critique of his game. The other thing I want to point to here as well with Dylan Brown is there were so many times last year where Dylan Brown would chase someone down from behind on the opposite side of the field and save a try. So he's using his pace in defense and also in attack, and he's one of the premier defensive halves in the competition. And as a 5/8, what do you want? You want a guy who can run the ball strongly, who can create tries, and who's going to be rock solid in defense.
You also want someone who's going to inject themselves into the game when not a lot's happening. And I think that's kind of been, prior to last year, Dylan Brown's issue. I think for the first couple of games of this season, we've even seen that potentially hasn't gotten involved as much as he probably should have. To his own admission, he actually came out and said that, I'm not injecting myself enough. And I think for Para to be successful again in 2023, he's got to play the same way that he played last year. He's got to have Lane back as well. I think having Sean Lane there helps him a lot because, Lane was making so many line breaks last year, and who was right there to take the support line? It was Dylan Brown.
Yep.
So the only thing I will say is he needs to inject himself, and I think Para will be sweet once he starts doing a lot more of that.
I think you're right too, in that these guys do rely on their back rows. So, we talked about Kikau below, we talk about Sean Lane, Dylan Brown, we're talking about Kaloa Matangi with Cody Walker in different videos as well. Number one, Cam Munster, a guy who does not rely on a back rower though.
Yeah.
A guy who you can put anyone next to. And look, Cam Munster is the A+ 5'8". He is head and shoulders above the rest. There is really no competition. We posted a poll on the channel too, and he got about 80% of the votes as the top 5'8". So a couple of homers from different players, but
Doesn't surprise me.
He's the guy.
Yeah.
He's the guy.
He really is. He's one of those guys who I don't know if I've ever seen a 5'8" who the ball can pretty much stop, and he can stop, and then start to play from nothing. Like, I've never seen really anyone in the league do something like that. It seems like, when you're the opposition team, you're probably yelling out, smash him, like, because he's got the ball, he's not doing anything, but it always seems to freeze the defenders and they don't know what to do. So it's scary with the ball in hand, but also comes away in defence, more often than not.
And let's throw toughness and clutchness in there too. So toughness, that first game against Parramatta, fractured finger sticking out of himself. And he's got that strapped up. He's come back on the field. He's set up a clutch try to get them into Golden Point, and they've won that game.
Yeah.
Or throw in any Origin performance. Cam Munster has been at the centre of Queensland's strength.
He's won grand finals as well, playing fullback and 5'8".
He's just that guy. He's that guy.
Yeah, even when Melbourne was struggling last year, like they threw him into fullback and he still doesn't look out of place. He's kind of one of those guys who's just a natural footy player, and he's one of those players that everyone wants to have on their team, and I can see why the Dolphins threw so much money at him.
Well, when we talk about guys who are worth $1.5 million, Cam Munster is one of very few that you could put in that category.
He's earned it as far as I'm concerned.
Let me throw some stats at you to finish things off here for Cam Munster. We have 145 metres a game last year. We've got 11 tries in that season, and he was first in tackle breaks across all 5'8s as well, with 5.3 a game. So constantly probing, constantly dominating. Cam Munster's our number one. Let us know in the comments who you want to see rankings of next, and we're going to have ranking videos here every Monday coming to you live on The Casual Athlete.